Let's dive right into this explainer, because today we're deconstructing a really fascinating piece from Pride Palace. It tackles one of the most common and, honestly, most loaded phrases used in gender conversations today. It's a talking point you hear constantly, right? Usually dropped as this absolute mic drop to end a debate. But as we map out this source material, we're going to get a crystal clear picture of what's actually being discussed and exactly why this seemingly simple phrase misses a massive part of the picture.
It's just biology. Okay, let's dive into this. You've undoubtedly heard it before, and honestly, it's incredibly effective as a conversation stopper, mainly because it sounds so simple, definitive, and rooted in hard science. But Pride Palace makes a really compelling case here. They argue that leaning solely on this phrase leaves out a huge, incredibly complex part of the human story. So we're going to deconstruct exactly why it falls short and why looking at the broader context is so valuable for all of us.
First up, sex versus gender. The authors lay this out with a really direct comparison. On one hand, we have sex. This is typically assigned at birth based on physical traits, things like anatomy and chromosomes. But then, on the other hand, we have gender, and the article describes this as an identity. It's someone's internal experience and how they actually navigate the world. Now, for a lot of people, these two concepts align perfectly, but the core thesis of the piece we're looking at is that they just don't align for everyone. And the crucial point here is that a lack of alignment doesn't make a person's lived experience any less real.
Now, let's look at biological complexities.
Now, what's really interesting here is that even from a purely biological standpoint, human bodies rarely fit perfectly into two neat, distinct boxes. I mean, we're actually looking at a vast spectrum of intersex traits, hormonal differences, genetic variations, and completely diverse physical expressions. The article points out that when people just say, it's just biology, they're often taking a middle school level understanding of science and applying it to a system that naturally contains an incredible amount of complexity. Biology itself simply isn't a strict binary. Which brings us to the social dimension.
So the piece argues that to really grasp gender, we have to look at all of its active ingredients. Biology is in there, sure, but it doesn't take up the whole pie. Things like culture, language, and deeply personal experiences each claim a massive share. Gender is just incredibly multifaceted. It's this intricate intersection of how you understand yourself internally and how society perceives you externally.
And that intersection is exactly how the text defines being non-binary. Identities like non-binary exist precisely because of this complex mix of personal experience and social dimensions. Because gender involves all these distinct layers, traditional binary categories simply fail to capture everyone's reality. The term non-binary literally just gives a name to the experience of not fitting neatly into those inherited cultural boxes.
Moving right along to aligning internal and external. There's a major misconception out there that people who transition are trying to fundamentally change their biology. But the text pushes back on that hard. It argues that for many, the goal isn't about altering biology at all. It's actually about actively seeking alignment.
I think Pride Palace frames it perfectly here, aligning their external life with their internal sense of self. This really emphasizes that the true goal is simply for a person to be recognized, respected, and understood for who they fundamentally already are. It's literally just about matching the outside to the inside.
And the article presents this as a very real path to relief. Step 1, aligning the external life with the internal self. Step 2, gaining recognition and respect from society. And the result of that? A massive reduction in emotional distress. The text is highlighting that this isn't some abstract philosophical motivation. It's a deeply human one. It's about finding relief from a profound disconnect that causes severe emotional pain.
And that leads us perfectly into why understanding this matters. The text contrasts two very different approaches and their actual real-world consequences. If you reduce the conversation down to just biology, you actively invalidate identities, which leaves people feeling entirely unsupported and unseen. But on the flip side, acknowledging the full picture, biology plus identity plus lived experience, creates the necessary space for real understanding. And according to the source, that makes a profound difference in human lives.
So the crucial point is really this. People are just more complex than labels, and far more real than any simplified explanation. Biology is absolutely a part of the story, there's no doubt about that, but the authors emphasize it is not the whole story. At the end of the day, everyone deserves to be understood exactly as they are, without being reduced to a single data point. I want to wrap up our explainer today by leaving you with this. What happens when we look beyond the label? Based on all the complexities of sex, gender, biology, and lived experiences we've just unpacked from this article, I'd encourage you to really reflect on what changes when we widen our lens. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring.